Hi, I'm Jane Velez Mitchell. Welcome to the Rancher Advocacy Program Summit. We are here to tackle perhaps the most important question of our time. How can ranchers and farmers survive and thrive without using animals, evolving to something more sustainable? I'm here in Los Angeles, but I'm going to throw it straight out to my co-host, Renee King-Sonnen in Texas. Take it away, Renee.
Thank you, Jane. I'm so honored to be here for the first ever inaugural RAP Summit. The Rancher Advocacy Program is a result of a Texas beef cattle ranch that went vegan. That's right, in Texas, Angleton, we had a vegan change of heart when I could no longer tolerate the cows going to sale and getting slaughtered. As a result, our story landed in the laps of everyday people all over the world, and the Rancher Advocacy Program was born. Roll the video. So many ranchers are just like us. They really love animals and kill them.
I never did like taking my cows and dropping them off at the sale barn, but I did it because I figure, hey, we eat this, you know, might as well take responsibility for it.
Our story started landing in the laps of everyday ranchers and farmers, and they started relating to us. There was something that started to click in them.
Y'all have gotten it out of the back of your brain, and y'all got it up on the surface, and now you're practicing it. You're
walking the walk.
You're walking the walk.
The anger doesn't change them. The conversations change them. A rancher talking their language on national TV, they knew that it started pulling on their heartstrings. And so these taboo subjects that you never talk about when you're a rancher, like your feelings about the cows that you send to slaughter, like your feelings about the chickens that you send to slaughter. Because I've talked to ranchers, 8th generation cattle ranchers, that tell me, you know, our kids don't want to inherit the farm. They're going vegan and vegetarian. I've heard this over and over, and this is one of the big problems coming into our society.
So we were coordinating this with Davey's parents, and they're like, okay, well, there's a schedule in November for some of the cows to be picked up for auction.
Did you round them up?
No. Hell no. Yeah.
These kids that are coming up do not want to inherit the cruelty, period. We've got to help them. The Ranchers Advocacy Program is positioned to do that.
What a powerful video. Now, we've got people watching from around the world. If you're watching on Facebook, put your questions in the comment section. If you're watching on Zoom, put them in the chat. We've got an incredible panel of thought leaders, filmmakers, vegan entrepreneurs, engineers, people who help develop the internet, as well as rancher and farming families. So I want to start with one of my favorite people on the planet. She inspires me so much, Miyoko Schinner of Miyoko's Creamery. She has one of the top vegan brands in the world, incredible vegan butters and plant-based cheeses. Miyoko, how do we connect the products that you need, your ingredients, with these farmers and ranchers who want to make something else? How do we marry them?
Sure. Hi, Jane and Renee. Thanks for having me on. It's nice to connect with everybody. This is a very, very important topic, because what we really need to do going forward is show ranchers and people in the animal agriculture industry that the plant-based industry is not the problem. We are not the threat, that we are the solution. We are also facing a huge supply chain issue, as, for example, fava beans are becoming increasingly popular in the plant-based community for plant-based companies. And we're going to be facing potentially a shortage of things like fava bean protein, as well as pea protein. So if we can help these farmers transition to crops that can become part of the supply chain for this burgeoning new industry, then we will be providing farmers an opportunity to become part of the solution and not continue to make a problem.
Wow, that is absolutely incredible. Renee?
Thank you so much, Miyoko. We are so honored to have you, not only as a panelist, but as a Diamond sponsor. And next on the lineup is one of my favorite people in the world, Leah Garces. Leah is the president of Mercy for Animals. She's overseen international campaigns. She's the author of a book called Grilled, and she does amazing work. This woman is powerful. She just recently started a wonderful farm transformation program called Transformation. And Leah, would you please tell everybody here how you see it behind your eyes on how farmers can change the world without using animals?
Thank you so much for having me here today, Jane and Renee. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm thrilled that we're all coming together to talk about this problem and the solution, which Miyoko just referred to, that we are the solution, not the problem. In my mind, we have to come into these areas. A lot of times as vegan advocates, we come into these areas and we're seen as a group that wants to take away choices, take away jobs, and take away a way of life. And what we're trying to do with our transformation project is the opposite. What we're trying to do is say, we're about constructing a compassionate food system. We're about creating choices, actually creating jobs that are actually sustainable for the future. So transformation is about taking chicken factory farmers, pig factory farmers who don't want to do this anymore. As your video said, a lot of these people don't want to do this. They don't have a lot of choices. So we're creating choices, and we're helping farmers transition from these cruel ways of producing food to compassionate ways like hemp and mushrooms and lettuce and all kinds of things for the future sustainable, kind, compassionate food system.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Leah. So glad that you're here joining us and helping us change to the world. We are on the tip of the spear. Another beautiful human that's at the tip of the spear is one of my favorite people. Kip Anderson has been part of what we're doing here at Rowdy Girl Sanctuary since the very beginning. He's a board member. He's the founder of Animals Own Movement. He's focused on all sorts of films and media. Most of you are going to know him as co-producer of Cowspiracy, What the Health, and I know he's moving and shaking, creating all kind of powerful videos. Kip, what do you see as the main challenges behind your eyes on how we can change the world of animal farming?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Renee and Jane. Thank you for putting this powerful summit on. Well, it's a good time to be in the movement that we're in now, because you see it so quickly happening, whereas before just fighting for the truth. What is the truth? It's all been covered up, and we're kind of the weird ones, you know, what's going on, these crazy people. And then also in the truth coming out, it's like, now, okay, this is the truth. This is the solutions based. So we're like at the fun part of the things where we don't have to everything like fighting for the truth. But with that being said, you know, my big thing I always want to promote is people who are watching this is to share the truth. People, videos such as like Earthling Ed, who recently did video on calling out the film Kiss the Ground, some stuff with this like regenerative farming with animals. And one of my favorite stories as far as of transforming old cattle farms into something new is the family in Brazil where it was a couple, they planted millions and millions of trees in there. It was an old abandoned cattle farm. And within years, 20 years, the climate lowered by several degrees. The river out of nowhere came back. All the wildlife came back. Wow. And all they did is plant trees. And it's the biggest carbon sink in the planet is trees. We have all these other expensive things we can do. And like, if we just plant trees, I'm all about reforestation right now. And that's like my number one thing, like reforestation. So get out there, share the truth, and reforest. Anything you do, start planting trees. That's like the big thing I'm all about.
Absolutely. Reforestation. We could take a lot of this land that we're using for cattle grazing and for growing crops to feed farm animals and actually reforest and then reverse climate change in the process. I want to go straight out to another one of my heroes, Kim Sturla of Animal Place. This is one of the longest running sanctuaries in the nation. You, Kim, get calls from farmers who are kind people who don't want to gas their animals, which is called depopulation, mass gassing. I worked with you recently on one of those cases. Tell us what the farmers who you interact with want in terms of getting out of this cruel aspect of the industry.
You know, for so many years, we've worked with a number of farmers, all egg farmers, those doing free range and those also doing battery operation. And so we have a wonderful cooperative agreement with them that when they are, quote unquote, depopulating after about a year and a half, when most of them are going to be gassed on site in California, they're letting us come in and take hundreds and hundreds. So every year we're saving about 3,000 birds, and then they're going to the adoption queue. But what's really, to me, one of those takeaways with this program, as we're reaching out to hundreds of egg farmers up and down the state, is that they're not the villain. When you get to know these people as individuals and they are interested, they absolutely would prefer that we save some of those animals rather than them just gassing another 1,000, that these are animals that otherwise can have a life. And those relationships, there's a number of farmers that we've developed very close relationships with. And it has, to me, been a very enlightening experience. It's wonderful to save that many lives and place them into forever homes. But it's also been an educational experience for me that there is common ground. Animal Place is an animal rights vegan organization. We promote plant-based diets. We bring people into the sanctuary to educate them how to make educated dietary choices. And then there's the farmers over here, but we can find some midway where they can help animals, we can help animals by working together.
Wow, that's very powerful. And the fact that I remember one of those rescues, you actually said that the farmer himself was carrying the chickens to the trucks and calling it a liberation himself, which says everything. Wow. Renee?
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Kim, I'm so glad you're on the call. The next thought leader, brilliant mind that we have coming on is a man that I've never really gotten to know, but I have heard all about. His name is Eugene Cook. And Eugene is changing the landscape of inner city communities. He's helping people to learn how to grow food in their own backyard and getting innovative in the process. And y'all, there are hundreds of people trying to get on this right now. We're trying to fix this in the background. So just so you know, all of you out there, I know that a lot of people are trying to get in.
You can watch on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com/Jane Velez Mitchell and you can watch it right there. Continue on.
Thank you. Eugene?
Yes, greetings. Hi, everyone. It's good to be here. It's a very interesting conversation. It's something that's rather new to me. So the question about what can ranchers do? If ranchers are really uninterested in doing type of farming that they've been doing, and it really depends on the mean and average age of these farmers, because there's a tremendous amount of workload that is required to grow food in a natural regenerative way. And what we have been doing, Grow Where You Are, what we do is we focus on the youth. We focus on young people. We focus on making sure that young people who are already interested and who are already living a vegan lifestyle, these are our core team that we have been growing alongside with. We have a strategic initiative called Growing Options. And in there, we teach young people who already have a basic understanding of agriculture and horticulture. We take it the next step so that they start to look at the food system in total. And again, these are people who are already vegan and who are, the main thing that they are preparing for is access to land that we're speaking of here. One of the best things we think ranchers can do is decide how much of that land they're ready to deed over to young people who are interested. As you stated before, the ranchers have said that their children do not want to inherit the cruelty. So if there are young people who are not interested in taking on that land and the responsibility that comes with it, we have many young people that we know who are ready to receive that and are actually trained and prepared right now to grow food in a regenerative, veganic fashion. So what Grower You Are suggests, we suggest that if you have land, you're over 55 years of age, and you want to know how to do something productive, you contact us and we can make sure that that land is transferred into the hands of young growers who are ready to start to produce all the things we're talking about, from Miyoko's ingredients, as well as sorghum as a grain and as a fuel and as a sweetener, and millet, okra is a superfood. These are all things that are ideal for where we are. We're in southeast of the United States here in Atlanta, Georgia. And we know that when we tend to this land properly, in the ways of Dr. George Washington Carver, making sure that we do rotations with peanuts, looking at agroecology, looking at the work of Pierre Rabhi and Wangari Maathai and Vandana Shiva, and we look at how to produce multiple crops like lentils, sorghums, millets, barleys, yams, pumpkins. We need to start producing our carbohydrate sources, because right now, America is getting ready to go into a tremendous, tremendous hunger. We are going to see, they say after December 26th, millions of people are going to lose their unemployment benefits. That's going to include EBT and all of that. So we're going to have localized food systems in urban areas with carbohydrates and protein production happening on rural farm sites. Grow Where You Are is prepared. We have an agenda and we have the people who can do that work. So we suggest anybody who's ready, transfer a portion of that property, get it off your hands, get it into legal ownership with our growers that can have equity in this work, and let's get the food growing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Eugene. Appreciate you so much.
I want to go now to Dr. Silas Rao, who is my hero. He is a man who was instrumental in the advancement of internet speeds. He's an engineer, Stanford PhD. You look at the big picture. Dr. Rao, what is the big picture of the need to transform these farmers and ranchers to something more sustainable, to reverse climate change, solve world hunger, and many, many other issues, prevent future pandemics? How do we do it? Can we do it?
Yeah, thank you, Jane. Thank you, Renee, for organizing this. And the big picture is that we are extracting 6 times as much food as we really need from the planet. And yet, 97% of Americans are not getting enough nutrition in the richest country in the world. So we are doing something really, really wrong in the food system. The food system is so messed up because we are taking most of that food and we are feeding it to animals. And the animals are giving us a tiny amount of food. About 15% of the food we eat comes from animal food. The rest comes from plant foods already. So in the richest country in the world, if 97% of the people are not getting enough fiber, 98% are not getting enough potassium, 68% are not getting enough magnesium, there is so much malnutrition in the richest country in the world. It tells you that the food system itself is completely upside down. It's not being done. The food system is not there to give nutrition to people. It is there to make money for corporations. That's how we have set it up. An example is, when this gentleman I know, Paul Chatlin in Chicago, he had one artery 100% blocked and two major arteries 65% blocked. And he couldn't even walk 10 steps without losing his breath. And he went to his cardiologist, and the cardiologist told him, you have 2 choices. Either you get a triple bypass heart surgery or you go on a whole food plant-based diet. And he chose the whole food plant-based diet. And to understand how to eat like that, he went to the Esselstyn's farm and he took a 30-day course on how to cook like this. And it cost him $975. So then he tried to get Blue Cross Blue Shield to reimburse him for the $975, and they wouldn't do it. But they were willing to pay $125,000 for his triple bypass heart surgery. But they didn't have a code to reimburse for the cooking classes.
Wow.
This is exactly the situation we face on a global level. Okay, we have enough money to fix the problems we get, but we don't have enough money for the cure, which is literally changing our food systems, focusing on plant-based foods, and focusing on true nutrition for people, and doing it honestly and with integrity.
Thank you, Dr. Silas. We appreciate you so much. And next we have up one of my really great favorites too. I've had the opportunity to not only collaborate with him, but meet him, sit at a table and dine with him. He's a great activist, Robert Grillo. Robert is an activist. He's an author. He's a speaker. He's the founder and director of Free from Harm. And he is really out there trying to do all he can to end slaughterhouses. In Chicago, we have the one and only Robert Grillo. Tell us all about it.
Thanks, Renee, and hello to everyone. It's great to be a part of this summit. And so Slaughter-Free Cities is the campaign that we're working on right now with the goal of helping to end slaughter through a network of local chapters that benefits animals, the planet, workers, and communities. So we set up chapters where people seek us out for help. And sometimes we set up chapters with local activists there to fight a slaughterhouse proposal or an existing slaughterhouse. We had a couple of major successes recently with our Milwaukee chapter, which defeated a $60 million slaughterhouse proposal, the first of its kind in Milwaukee. The same company tried to open up a slaughterhouse in its hometown of Franklin, which is about 20 minutes outside of Milwaukee, has been operating for 40 years, wanted to build a $73 million slaughterhouse in Franklin. And the city council, the pressure we put on the city council, they voted against it. But then that wasn't the end of the story. After that, the lawyers for the slaughterhouse, the high-powered lawyers came in and had a closed-door session with the city council, and they re-voted. And in this case, they voted for it. But the battle is not over. We are going to continue to fight this and other proposals. We use a four-pronged strategy. We use nonviolent resistance and action. We use litigation. We use legislation. And finally, negotiation. And what I mean by negotiation maybe is most relevant to this discussion. In one case, all else failed, and it was a done deal, and there was a slaughterhouse proposal in a town that was green lighted. And we came in way too late to do anything about it. Our last resort, we picked up the phone and we talked to the slaughterhouse owner. We had several people in that community call him and say, hey, this isn't really the right business. We welcome you to our small town, but this is really not the kind of business we need here. And he listened and was humble. I was really impressed at how humble and responsive he was. So he changed his mind and he decided another type of business might be better.
Okay, well, hi everybody. All right, hold on. We're gonna now move on.
Yeah,
Something
that's
very
that's
important.
1950 style code. It fits you perfect. You look good.
Oh my God. Hey,
She's always bringing me little gifts.
Okay, we gotta just mute everybody. All right, there we go. We muted everybody, but can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Fantastic. We're going to go now to, and that's just a sign that there's a lot of people watching, hundreds and maybe even thousands around the world. We're going to talk about solutions, specifics. So you hit, Renee, the micro solutions, and I'm going to hit some of the macro solutions because I think that's the heart of the issue where we can really make some change.
Well, thank you, Jane. This is a great topic to really consider. The micro solutions are all about thinking outside of the box. What are we going to do to, narrow in, think about how to create like labs. Like right now at our sanctuary, we're creating a veganic lab, and Tommy will tell you about all that in a minute. We're creating solutions around, doing the research. The more research you do, the more you can understand, the more choices you have. We need to evaluate, our individual strengths. I mean, we're at the tip of the spear, y'all. We are there. It's not like there's a lot of information out there to go off of to make all these determinations. We have to figure this out. And that's what's so fun about this. We have the micro solutions and we have the macro solutions that Jane's going to talk about right now. And I know I'm going to want to get in the middle of.
Well, this is my favorite part of this discussion, because I was telling somebody, Claire Smith, who is the founder of the incredible vegan ETF, exchange traded fund, VEGN. And she said, well, and she's watching from Ireland, what the solution is, green bonds. Right now, green bonds are huge. And I'll just tell you very quickly, and then we're going to open it up to conversation. They raise funds for new and existing projects which deliver environmental benefits. They can include conservation and adaptation to climate change. It's a fixed income instrument that is specifically earmarked to raise money for climate and environmental projects. And these bonds are typically asset backed. And they have tax incentives to enhance their attractiveness to investors. $157 billion worth of green bonds were issued in 2019. And part of their mission is sustainable agriculture. So the asset that would back these green bonds would be the land the farmers are on, Miyoko. A lot of these farmers and ranchers are in deep debt, but if a green bond could wipe out that debt, and then the land could be the asset that backs them, we could have a huge game changer where then these farmers wouldn't be drowning in debt. They would have the support to make the transition, Miyoko. Miyoko, are you there? All right, why don't we throw it to Kim? You're there. You deal with farms. What do you think about green bonds?
That's Jane, that's a really interesting question, and that's something that I know really very little about. This issue is so timely, and I admire you guys for tackling this, for initiating it. Renee and your sanctuary, and Miyoko and MFA, because this is a time where the public is ready to make those food choice changes. The public is getting sensitized to the animals, and they're really concerned about what is on their plate. The green bonds, I myself don't have any experience in, but I would think that if we're going to help farmers make that transition, there's a lot of support services that I'm assuming they will need. And one, of course, is some kind of financial aid as they transition over to hopefully a cruelty-free farming. That's organic, better yet, veganic. We used to have a veganic farm here also, so that is the way to go.
Let me throw it out to Leah Garces, because you're dealing with farm transformation. And one of the things that we want to do is look at the big picture. It seems like every single farmer had to reinvent the wheel themselves. And that's obviously not efficient. We need to provide macro systems that allow large groups of farmers to make the transition at one time. For example, regional cooperatives, where farmers who are in the same area and have the same kind of soil and the same kind of temperature and the same kind of geography can work together to come up with alternatives. And then the green bonds is something that I just found out about myself. They're relatively new, but they are these massive, massive investments, corporations investing literally billions of dollars, and they get tax incentives. And it's all basically, as long as it has an asset backing them, which is the farm land, it could really be the thing that would allow large groups of farmers to switch over. What are your thoughts on that, Leah?
Yeah, I think it's a great question to ask that I don't have a precise answer on, but I will tell you that we're working with a group of farmers in Northeast Texas right now that are chicken farmers, broiler chicken farmers, factory farmers who are thinking of exactly that, creating a cooperative on hemp. So hemp is this beautiful product actually that has the capacity to do all kinds of things. So apart from CBD oil, it has regenerative qualities for the soil. So the male hemp plant can regenerate the soil. It can be used for textiles, it can be used for plastics. But these farmers need a central place to come together to be a supplier for a larger kind of effort. And so they're talking about doing things like creating a central distribution point, creating a distillery where they're going to be creating the hemp products. And inevitably, what the beautiful thing is a lot of their kids are coming back. So these are folks who are, the people we're working with are in their 40s, 50s, and they have kids who are 20 or so who are kind of not sure what to do with their life. And two of these farmers, one, I just participated in a hemp harvest in Texas, and it was so beautiful because this farming community had been ripped apart by the chicken industry. The brothers had had so many problems with their health and physically and mentally. But now the brothers and the uncle and the niece and the kids, so we had the whole spectrum from a 15-year-old, we had a 22-year-old, and the 22-year-old had been living in San Diego and she didn't know what to do with her life. And now she's coming back because she wants to create tinctures and create and be back on the farm and work the land. And she has the skills to do it. So, you know, I think that the question of the inputs needed, we do have to look at the macro level at things like subsidies that prop up factory farming. And this effort that we're making, we're able to sit down with legislators right now and get a lot of ears. This is a bipartisan issue. We're finding both sides of the aisle want to talk to us about this. So we've been talking to representatives across the spectrum who are interested in thinking of legislative solutions to this, where farmers are given money to transition, to get them out of debt. If you know the Farm Systems Act that was put forward by Farm Reform Systems Act, which was put forward by Cory Booker and Elizabeth Warren, in that proposal is a debt relief aspect, which would allow farmers to, if they want to transition, then they could get away from, it has a moratorium on factory farming. So we do need the macro, we need cooperatives, and it's very exciting to think about not just regenerating the soil, but regenerating families and regenerating the communities that have been ripped apart by factory farming.
And we just want
I'm
to
so glad you brought this up, Leah, because one of the things that I have been really looking at that Cory Booker has said over and over again that really speaks to my heart is that vegans and farmers have finally found common ground.
Absolutely.
I mean, when I read this, I was like, oh my God, this man is like channeling what we're doing over here. He said there's absolutely one thing that we can all agree on, and that's that none of us, all of us, are against the mechanized and exploitation of animal agriculture. Farmers, vegans, we all agree on this. And so if we can come to that crossroads and we can realize that farmers have lost control. I mean, they've lost control. They don't have, they lost control of their livelihoods. They've lost control of the animals, their crops, their land. They have no choices anymore. They're in onerous contracts that are dictating the way they raise their animals. And, you know, it's setting these farmers in competition with one another. The production speeds, the way that they're raising the animals, packing more animals into more sheds, giving them more antibiotics, massive manure lagoons. I mean, it's unsustainable. So thank you for bringing up Cory Booker, because I have really been studying his philosophy behind all this. And it is truly a macro solution that he's in the middle of.
So Kip Anderson, you are, you know, you have your thumb on the pulse, being a filmmaker who really is capturing the zeitgeist, as it were. When this started, this movement, it was like every farmer had to figure it out for themselves. But now that we're coming together, do you see the possibility of, for example, regional cooperatives, green bonds, and other ways that they can operate as a unit and support each other because they feel alone?
Yeah, that's the tough thing is, it's so important. You mentioned it for a second, and Leah, that was great. Everything you said is tough to follow that because you said so many things there. The big one is subsidies. It's such a powerful thing that's in both films. One of the only few things that were in both Cowspiracy and What the Health is the whole concept of meatonomics. It's a phenomenal book, and the subsidies is so unbelievable, and we just touch it in both films. But the more you know about how much money we're paying from our tax dollars to have these Big Macs or whatever, any factory farm, to lower the prices. If the subsidies were taken out, the prices would be so high that people would not want it, because that's a big reason why people are eating these horrific, especially the fast food and the factory farm animals, is because the prices are so low. So these campaigns to really stop subsidies. So I'm not necessarily asking your question directly right now, because it's a very challenging one, but I just want to really emphasize how powerful. There's some animal activists, part of this movement, they focus on just subsidies. Like if we just take the subsidies out and put this in the subsidies for like hemp farming and converting to these other industries that are so beyond sustainable, thrivable, that help our planet and everything, people will make those choices to eat healthier, and then our planet, because the prices will come down for all the healthy foods and raise for all the horrible ones. How to, bring everyone together. It's, basically that's what this discussion is these alternative solutions that you can replace animals with other things like hemp growing and mushrooms and microgreens, and even retreats. Some of the story I mentioned really briefly in Brazil, where they rewilded their entire community. Now they have a school, they have a retreat center there, they have a school there, and it's all about regenerative farming, how to transform whatever land you have. And so there's just so many different creative solutions out there. So it's really just putting this all together that we're talking about.
Dr. Rao?
Yeah, we can ask Dr. Rao for sure, but what he was just talking about reminded me of what Holly and Davey are doing right there in Texas on their land. And Holly, I know you're doing a lot with Starlove Ranch to regenerate your land so that the cows can eat and flourish there, so that you don't have to constantly be feeding them. What are you doing out there to help regenerate the land, Holly?
Hi, everyone.
Howdy.
Hey, Holly.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having us. We are honored to be amongst so many stars in the veganic movement. We represent, like Renee was talking about, the kids that inherited the ranch, and we needed to switch it up and change it up. So one thing that we're doing is we are actually practicing regenerative grazing practices, which I know is kind of taboo. Kip Anderson mentioned it, and I think that, we have cows on this land, and to focus on a regenerative model at this point neglects the animals that we do have on site. So we have been rotational grazing them in effort to regenerate the ranch.
But you guys inherited the ranch. You are from a longtime family of ranchers, but you yourself didn't want to do what your previous generations had done because of compassion. Just spell that part out, if you would.
Yeah, compassion for the animals and also compassion for the land. The land itself was pretty battered from 150 years of family ranching practices. So when we came onto the scene and took over stewardship, it was important for us to save the cows so that they were no longer going to slaughter, and also to save the land and regenerate it so that wildlife could also thrive here. So finding a synergetic relationship between our rescue animals, our family, the wildlife that calls Starlove Ranch home, and all of the grasses and trees and plants, it became our focus to learn and grow as people who were not farmers or ranchers coming into this, in cultivating the balance and kind of using biomimicry techniques to go back to a time on this land before agriculture, animal agriculture, industrial agriculture practices took over. So just kind of getting back to the basics and learning how to, just be symbiotic with us, the humans, the rescue animals, the wildlife, and the land itself.
Well, this is such an important aspect. We want to bring in more of the ranchers and farmers now. So let's hear from another ranching family. Roll the videotape.
It took me 4 years of having these feelings before I went vegan.
And then she tried to go humane first, and she was trying to convince me to kill one of our cows. And I said, I don't want to eat a cow I know.
Yeah, this was before I went vegan. I said, well, why do we buy our meat from the store and we have all these grass-fed beef cows out
See, I'm
there?
the same way though.
You are.
People ask me that all the time. Do you process it? I'm like, oh no, I can't eat one that I'm
Would
the
you
same.
know?
Yeah.
Very
Right.
well said. Renee?
Right. Wow. You know, I am so honored to introduce a great family, Cindy and Richard Traylor. Y'all have just really, really come a long way. To watch Cindy and Richard Traylor go vegan, 6th generation cattle ranchers, has been unbelievable in Texas. When Cindy called me, unable to, fathom sending honey to slaughter, Richard was about to send honey to slaughter because she was no longer able to produce. And she was in tears. Richard was no way he was going to go vegan. And now this man is vegan. And I want right now, instead of me telling you any more about him, Cindy, Richard, why don't y'all tell everybody here why you are transitioning your farm in Huntsville, Texas?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh gosh.
Yes.
Yeah, 6th generation here. I learned how to drive out in the middle of this pasture here, and cows have been out here since before I was born. And my first memory was cows out here. My little brother and I chasing them around out in the pasture. But the epiphany, once you get over that hump, you realize how common sense takes over. And there's 2 coexisting problems that are so highlighted. And those are what I've been hearing this afternoon from everybody here. And those 2 coexisting obstacles, if you will, or problems are you're killing the planet while you're killing yourself. You're killing your planet just to kill yourself. And I really think when more research is done, you're going to find that the basis of all diseases are probably animal protein. I feel so much better. I don't want to make this all about me, but my body is just so much better. I don't have Charlie horses after getting out and sweating all day long. I hadn't had a Charlie horse in 8 months. And yeah, I used to laugh at veganism, and I never dreamed I would. But yeah, now it's a way of life. I want to say one other thing. Most people want to do the telling and talking. I think listening and learning is the best. I want to listen and learn, and y'all tell me how I can make this profitable without having slaughter. We're not doing the cows, but we're not doing anything else right now. So question of
we're still exploring.
Yeah, we're trying
what we're going to do. We've got about 4 or 5 different ideas. One of them is hemp.
Bamboo?
Bamboo.
Right.
Plump bamboo, not the runners, because that goes forever, everywhere. And micronutrients. And trees is another thing that Kip had mentioned. Our problem with that is we don't think, we're not sure, do you get an agricultural exemption from just growing the trees, or do they say you have to harvest it? I don't know. So that's something we have to explore.
I want to bring Dr. Rao in, who is the big picture thinker who thinks outside the box. A lot of people on Facebook and on Zoom are asking, well, what about other products other than just vegetables? Can you address the many possibilities, Dr. Rao?
Yeah, it's literally about regenerating an ecosystem of trees, plants, shrubs, animals, all together, bringing back the original biodiversity of the planet, while providing enough nutrition for all of us to thrive. Because as I said, we have created a system in which we deliberately have monetized everything, so that when a dead tree has more economic value than a live tree, we cut down the tree. When a dead animal has more economic value than a live animal, we kill the animal. And then when a sick human being has more economic value than a healthy human being, we sicken people.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the 1.4 million people who have died of COVID-19. Did their governments tell them that if they went plant-based, they could reverse some of these conditions that make COVID-19 so lethal, like diabetes? If they could have put everyone on a 21-day program to overcome their diabetes, a lot of those lives could have been saved. But we don't do that. Why don't we do that? Because there's no money in it. So we monetized everything in the system. And then in the process, we have endangered life on Earth, through climate change, through biological annihilation, through chemical pollution, and through these pandemics. And we have addicted everyone into compulsive behaviors. I mean, our corporations are deliberately addicting people into compulsive behaviors, right? And then we lie to ourselves about protein or calcium, and finally we steal from the rich, from the poor to enrich the rich. The exact opposite of Robin Hood. That's the system we have. And this system is just going like that.
With Dr. Rao, if you could talk a little bit on, because when you told me one time whenever we were in Costa Rica, and I heard you say that we have normalized violence, that went through me like, it was like shattered my consciousnness, that violence is normalized and being compassionate is not normal. I mean, can you tell us a little bit more? I just love that whole concept, and I think everybody on here needs to understand that concept.
Yeah, fundamentally, we have created a system. It's a competitive system to choose, to determine who is better than who. That we constantly do that. In our education, we do that. In everything we do that. In our games, we do that. And so this is a system of one-upmanship, right? Where it's fundamentally driven by violence. And it depends on violence towards animals. Okay? Because if you cannot commit violence towards animals, how can you commit violence towards other human beings? How can we have constant wars? And a lot of money is being made on wars. It's being made on this violence. So it's a system of normalized violence. Violence has to be normalized for us because we fundamentally are not violent beings. We are all fundamentally compassionate beings. Because if I ask anyone, would you deliberately hurt an innocent animal unnecessarily? They all say no. We would never do that. Which means we are born with compassion in our hearts, and then we are forced to become violent through our schooling systems, what we feed ourselves. So I say we are transforming from a system of normalized violence to a system of normal non-violence.
I want to bring in Eugene Cook, who is a veganic farmer in the city. Eugene, you've been hearing all this. There are food deserts in the inner city, but you have the solution to that. You can get people to start growing lots of food, sometimes vertically even, in their small plots. So is that taking off? I do understand, for example, that the African-American community in the United States is the fastest growing group of vegans anywhere.
That's interesting. I know the first time that I was familiarized with this kind of plant-based lifestyle was a gentleman by the name of Dick Gregory. And, that was the Bohemian diet way back in the 70s and 80s. And then his tremendous feats running from coast to coast and fasting and doing all of that for social justice reasons. Doing this for exactly what we were talking about earlier with the doctor about trying to promote a non-violent world and a world where wars do not persist unnecessarily. What I see is that some of the information you brought up, Jane, is really important. The information about the green bonds, I think that's really important. The where you drew the connection saying land is the asset. So if we look back and we take a look at when the land transfers happened here in the United States and how they happened. When the land transfers happen through so much theft and so much violence, then of course that violence has been normalized, because otherwise there would have been atonement a long time ago and then a redistributing of the land. When people are saying that they've been on the land for 6 generations, or people are talking about 150 years of animal agriculture, that's just a moment in time. So the land was productive and it was stewarded and it was safe prior to those 6 generations and prior to that 150 years. So when we look at who it is that is stewarding the land, and we're going to those same people and asking them what to do, and they're saying that they don't know, that points to one of the main issues. Is there are plenty of people who know, plenty of people who have done amazing things like Will Allen with Growing Power, what's happening with Soul Fire Farm, what's happening with Free Haven Farm out in Philly. There's amazing things happening all over. What Grow Where You Are is doing. There's amazing things happening all over the place. These people are the people who have by law been limited in our ability to own the land that you say is the largest asset to apply these green bonds to. Imagine if the ranchers and farmers and the children of these ranchers and farmers who don't know what to do decide that one of the best things to do is to transfer that land legally into the hands of people who do know what to do, who are already doing it. We've been growing food in urban and peri-urban areas for the last 20 years. And our goals and our ability to help people would greatly increase if these land transfers were made along with resource transfers, because with the amount of money that America spends creating one unnecessary, destructive Hollywood movie, that money can purchase land in a city that can go into immediate food production within the span of 6 months. That 6-month span is very crucial right now. So I think the green bonds, let's get into that. Using the bonds to eradicate the debt on land, let's get into that. Let's bring in people from organizations like Acres of Ancestry and think about how we can expedite these lands transfers so that we can get more food being produced. Grow Where You Are, if you check us out at growwhereyouare.farm, that is an introduction into the work that we can do and have been doing. So for those people who have the land and don't know what to do, this is what we do, is we start to think about long-term fruit production, orchards, vines, vineyards, berries, because the nutrition that the doctor says is lacking is most present in local food, local fruits.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Eugene. You bring up a real important point. You bring up a real important point that I've been thinking about since we started RAP in late 2017. And that is, what do we do with the land? What do we do? The thing is, we have got to take the land back. We have stolen the land. We have stolen the land. And now all of these animals that are coming off of all this land, you bring up one point, very, very important point, but another very important point to think about. And the reason why it's top of mind for me, because I talk to farmers and ranchers often about this, is what do you do with all these animals when they start exiting the food system? You know, why don't we take this land? I've been talking about it and get land grants. And that's when Jane talked about the green bonds. I was like, that's perfect. We've got to get land grants. We got to get ways to take care of this land so that we can not only thrive on this land with food, but we also got to give the land back to the animals. The animals, you know, we have put them in boxes, in crates, behind fences. You know, my husband, Tommy, you know, who's a wonderful veganic farmer now. I have watched this man go from being a full-blown cattle rancher in the heart of Texas. I have watched him fight me every step of the way. I remember him telling me, Renee, veganism was shoved down my throat and I chewed it up and I liked it. Tommy Sodden has become one of the most amazing heroes of my own, believe it or not. Even though we fight a lot, we struggle a lot, I have watched him. I mean, when he comes out of that garden with pumpkins, with beans, with beets, with carrots, with just untold bushels amount of food, all veganic. And I remember the inspiration that Kip Anderson gave us in 2015 when he said, Renee, if you're going to grow food, do it veganically. I had never even heard of the idea. You know, we are creating systems here and ways of doing things, ways of taking back the land. And my husband is out there in that garden all the time. Every time I turn around, he's out there cultivating, growing, researching, doing the work. Tommy, tell us how you are transitioning to become not only a sanctuary man, but a veganic farmer.
Hello, everybody. Well, if you'd have told me 6 years ago, I'd be sitting here on a Zoom call talking to a bunch of vegans about converting ranches over, I'd have said you were crazy. But, you know, it's the right thing to do. And after Renee forced me kind of in a situation to convert over, I started realizing that it was the right thing to do. I started talking to, you know, different people like Kip, and he suggested that we start a veganic garden, you know, and maybe even convert it on up to a veganic farm to help support the sanctuary. And back in Angleton, we initially tried this, and we were not successful at all, but it wasn't because we weren't really doing well, it was because a flood hit us. And so we were in, you know, we were trying to save ourselves for about 3 years with several different floods. We moved out here to a different piece of land near Welder, Texas, and it has been a joy. You know, we're out in the middle of a very rural area, and I really don't know what I'm doing, but I get out there and I plant things, and a lot of things do really well. And right now I'm trying to find the perfect crops to grow veganically right here on our piece of ground, and maybe, you know, escalate that up to a commercial type of a venture to help support the sanctuary. Right now, we're still in a testing mode. We're planting a lot of fruit trees along with the vegetables, and we're trying to make a food forest, if not, you know, a commercial enterprise. And if everybody would just plant a garden and learn to grow and escalate this, support your local growers, number one, you know, like Eugene and everybody else that's doing it, it would really help the planet. I really enjoy what I'm doing, and I learn more every day, and I really look forward to getting this COVID thing done with so we can get some people in here to help me. And anyway,
well, you are my hero, Tommy. You are amazing. And, you know, the ability to change and evolve and to open up to new possibilities is the mark of someone who is already evolved, that you had the ability to open your mind and your heart to new possibilities. And that's why you're my hero. And that's happening all over the place, because as Dr. Rao said, it was one of the most brilliant things he ever said, we're all being factory farmed. The people who are fed bad food, who get sick, are being factory farmed. And the ranchers and farmers are being factory farmed, forced into these onerous debts, forced to essentially be indentured servants to overlords who don't live on the farm. They're living on Park Avenue in Manhattan. They've never set foot on a farm. They've never gotten their hands or their nails dirty in their life. And so this is a liberation for the farmers too. Let's now look at another video where farmers and ranchers talk about their gut-wrenching, tough choices. Roll the videotape.
And you take them to the market and you feel like a murderer. I had one, Blondie. She was real docile and just the oldest cow. I think she was almost like 18 years old and still reproducing. She would not get in that trailer. She knew it was a one-way trip. She had watched that thing happen for 18 years, would not, and I got tired of hitting on her. I felt so bad because she was almost bloody on the back end just from trying. I went and bought one of those electric prods. I hit her one time, she went straight in the back of that trailer. And it was surreal. It was one of those things you never get past, and I haven't. Because like you said, she looks at me like, you know, what's up? You're my, you know, you kept me alive for this long, and you just, you know, it's, you're right, man. You take them to the market and you feel like a murderer, you know. And this is supposed to be an industry, and it's supposed to be, you know, what
rugged individuals all about men and all that, you know, but it's something in the back of your mind seems wrong about it.
Wow. Trailers, can you talk about that, Mr. Trailer?
Tears to my eyes. Yeah, it was, like I said, it was an epiphany. And I wouldn't have ever made it if it wasn't for my wife. Kind of like Tommy, you know, I didn't turn vegan until she forced it down my throat, and I learned to like it, and like, hey, this is working better than I even dreamed. But you got to look at the big picture, y'all. Like I said, it's the environment while you're killing yourself. And after a while, it just seems so simple, so obviously right, compared to that thing in the back of your head that was so obviously wrong that you chose to ignore and ignore and ignore. When you're raised like that and you don't know any better,
brainwashed.
You're indoctrinated to think this is the right thing to do until somebody gives you a different idea. And if you're open-minded enough to expound on it, all of a sudden you get there and the light goes on and it just gets brighter and brighter and brighter. And that's what's happened to me, both of us. But it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for my wife.
The thing with cows is they're so docile. You know, we pick the type of animal that is the most peaceful. And that's awful.
Yeah, they're peaceful. Cindy, I remember when you called me crying, and we had that conversation. I just stopped everything I was doing, and for an hour I listened to you. I cried with you because I understand. And there's other people out there, there's other farmers, ranchers, wives that have contacted me just like you and said, Renee, I don't know what to do. I don't even know how to talk about it. You know, these are taboo subjects, y'all. You know, as a farmer and rancher's wife, particularly, you are oppressed in the system to not talk about it. Don't name them cows, Renee. You know, don't do that. Let's not talk about it. You know, you better, if you're going to do this, you got to suck it up because this is what we do. And I remember how sad you were that Honey was about to get slaughtered because her hip was bad and she couldn't be mounted by the bull. I remember that conversation. And then when we went there and we picked up Honey, or we got Honey, then I found out that she had a daughter and her name was Ginger. And then we took both of them to Star Love Ranch. What a great story.
I want to bring in Kim Sterla of Animal Place, a question from Facebook from Vicky. How do we get rid of Future Farmers of America's and 4-H at school? Drug companies, she claims, are donating huge millions of dollars to keep these programs going. You work in that area, Kim.
Boy, thank you for that question, because I was just typing that into the chat box. We've worked a lot over the years with FFA and 4-H, and that description, Mr. Trailer, that you were giving of your cow is heartbreaking because for many reasons, but it reminds me of when I went to pick up a cow that was being raised in an FFA at the school, and somebody broke into the school and set this cow on fire.
God.
And he had over his entire body, he's blind in one eye, his ears are burned off. But even what to make it worse is that the high school kid who was raising this cow chose to nurse him back to health only so that he could take him to the county fair to sell him price per pound. Fortunately, we got custody of that cow. And when I drove down south to pick him up, to load him in our stock trailer, I was wondering, gosh, how are we going to get him in there? You know, he's only knows this kid. And this kid put a harness around him and easily guided him into the stock trailer because that cow trusted him. That cow would have done anything for that kid, not knowing that immense betrayal. FFA and 4-H is the antithesis of anything having to do with compassion for other beings. And we have worked so hard to try to make an offer to children who are raising these animals that we will provide sanctuary for them. That is the desensitization process that begins at an early age. And to me, it is heartbreaking. It is, as I said, it's the antithesis of trying to teach empathy and compassion. We've worked with other sanctuaries to also open up their barn doors to take in FFA or 4-H animals. So that child who all of a sudden kind of has that awakening that we can help the child as we can help the animal. But that one animal that we saved, Panda is his name, who's still with us. Wonderful cow. I'm grateful that we could take him in.
Thank you, Kim.
May I add something to this?
Yes. Sure you can.
It reminds me, you know, we're interviewing Melanie Joy, working on a few other projects, and people think that, you know, veganism is a belief system. And what the belief system really is that we can somehow, as human beings, you know, we didn't have someone else decide to call us humane beings. We decided to call ourselves that. We could have been the wise beings, the two-legged, you know, intelligent ones. We decided of all names to call ourselves humane beings. At the heart of who we are is compassionate beings with empathy. Unlike basically no other animal in that realm that has the choice to do what we do. And so, you know, it just reminds me, these stories we're hearing is that veganism is just another word for compassion, of empathy. It just so happens to be that's called the word. And that is our natural state of who we are. But when you have to, you know, at a very young age, this belief system that it's okay to eat animals, it's kill animals and ingest their flesh, this belief system has so entrenched. But then I think, as you were saying it, Richard, is that when it's you know, relieved of this and you're liberated from that, you're like, oh my God, this belief system was just a bunch of bullshit.
Exactly.
It's all from and liberated. I am now not in a belief system. Now I'm just come back to who I am. I was living in this matrix, if you will, and living in this belief system. But, you know, that's what it's funny when, you know, veganism is a belief system or it's a religion. It's like, no, it's just who we are. Carnism, that is a belief system.
I want to bring it open up to everybody, to all of our panelists. The mics are open. I see Leah, I see Dr. Rao, Eugene, Kip, Kim, Robert Grillo. Weigh in. Let's have that open discussion about how we can evolve, because the future of our planet depends on it. When we talk about climate change, preventing future pandemics, drought, world hunger, habitat destruction, wildlife extinction, the list goes on and on. So where are we? Let's get back to our basic question. What can farmers do on their land to thrive without using animals? Jump in, anyone.
Yeah, I'd like to add something about that. A couple of things. I want to talk about 4-H and FFA as well. We also have a few animals from FFA, a couple of pigs and a cow. And these are from kids that had a change of heart after raising them. Animal Place helped with the rescue of Louie. That was an interesting story. A girl raised Louie, didn't want to take him to slaughter. Her mom made her anyway. She took him to the county fair. And she got really smart and she administered dewormer to Louie so that she got kicked out of the county fair and Louie couldn't be turned into meat. So that was a really, really happy ending. And then we have a couple of pigs, but one of our sanctuary crew staff actually just visited Blackberry Farm near Animal Place, which is another sanctuary. And they have an alternative program to FFA and 4-H, which is working with the local high schools to bring kids to work at the sanctuary, get to know animals as living beings who want to live life according to their own needs and not end up at the county fair. So we're also thinking of starting a similar program. And I think this would be a really wonderful model for every sanctuary to offer this opportunity. And what they get out of FFA at the end of the day is money. They get a small amount of money for selling their animal. So if we can help fundraise, if every sanctuary can actually allocate a certain percentage, a very small amount of the budget to pay these kids as interns, then there is a monetary reward as well while they're opening up their hearts. And I do believe that we really do need to start working with kids when they're young, before they're hardened by the industries that they're often born into. I mean, I also live in agricultural land, surrounded by ranches everywhere. And the kids just grow up thinking that 4-H and FFA are the norm. And that animals are, you know, you treat them humanely. I mean, I had a conversation with a local rancher who said, you know, you and I have the same feelings about animals. We both love our animals and want to treat them fairly and humanely. But, you know, we just believe at the end of the day, we give them a good life. Now we get to choose what we do with their life. And I think that's the difference between so-called humane farming and sanctuary. So we need to help somehow bridge the gap and get to the schools, bring kids in and start teaching them about looking at animals in through a different lens. And we have to do that from early on. So we are going to launch that program as well. I also want to talk a little bit about a more holistic solution. I mean, there are some issues that we have to think about, because just because we get rid of animal agriculture doesn't mean that we're going to be able to save every farmer, and we have to be realistic about that. Studies show, according to Joseph Poor of Oxford University, if we were to cease animal agriculture, we would basically be able to reduce the amount of farmland and farm activities by over 60%, which means that a lot of farmers are not going to be able to, they're going to have to find some other way to transition to a different livelihood. Luckily, a lot of the ranches are owned by older individuals whose children do not want to take over anymore. And so we have to, yes, that's exactly right. We can't just talk about farming. We have to find other models. So some of the energy solutions that you're providing have been, are where I was going to go. It isn't just about farming. We have to find other solutions. The other thing is it's a holistic solution. We have to, I know you grow mushrooms. Now, where do you sell your mushrooms? How do you find that supply chain? So we have to think about it from the top down, the entire supply chain from the farmer to the shelf. How does it end up on that shelf? And how are each of those solutions funded? So I love the idea of the green bonds. I didn't know anything about them before. I'm going to research it. But there's also something called SPACs that have become very, that are just sort of, they've been around for a long time. It's a special, I'm trying to remember, I'm going to tell you what it's basically a shell public corporation. It is, I'm trying to remember what it's called exactly. It's a special purpose acquisition corporation, and they basically provide a means for companies to go have an IPO without having all the rigmarole. And there are actually 2 SPACs now being traded on NASDAQ that are only investing in vegan companies. And so these are the kinds of vehicles that we need. We need an entire economic solution from the farm all the way to the shelf, to the investors, everything. We need to find a holistic solution that encompasses, that takes care of every single part of that. So the farmer can grow whatever, they'll have a supply chain to sell it into an industry, into distribution. The companies that are vegan and that are trying to create economic solutions will have the investments that are appropriate through perhaps IPOs, through SPACs, and then individual consumers, that investors that want to invest, who don't have the millions of dollars to go through venture capital or to join a fund, can invest in those solutions. So the whole chain has to be considered in order for us to really change the world. And I really do believe it's changing so rapidly, we can get there in the next 10 to 15 years.
Oh, you said it brilliantly.
Absolutely.
Miyoko, absolutely incredible. And I want to go just as a follow-up to Dr. Rao about regional cooperatives, because each person who runs a farm is trying to figure this out. But if you had groups of farmers who are in the same geography, so they have similar soil, they have similar weather, and they're grappling with similar situations, and they can all, let's say, grow one product. I know you, for example, Miyoko, need potatoes. Is that what you need?
We actually, potatoes, hemp, we're exploring a variety of non-nut legumes and ingredients right now.
So regional cooperatives, Dr. Rao, what are your thoughts as an engineer and a systems analyst?
Yeah, I mean, these are great ideas. You know, we need to come together as a people to address our problems, you know, locally, and then expanding it out to, you know, have networks of these regional cooperatives so we can trade across these cooperatives. Ultimately, you know, if you look at the UN Sustainable Development Goals and you say these goals have to be met by 2030, at least that's what all the nations have signed up to meet. And one of them is no hunger, zero hunger. So let's try to meet that goal first. Right now, we are focusing just on goal number 8, which is economic growth. And we are pretending that by just growing the economy, we can solve all the goals, which is not true, because the economy has reached a point beyond which it cannot grow anymore. The planet is finite, so let's address, say, goal number 2. Let's have like a food healers cooperative where we make sure that healthy immune boosting food is freely available to every human being on the planet. Can we not do that as a species? If we cannot do that as a species, then we have no business pretending that we can meet all the goals.
I just want to say one thing. I think what you're saying is brilliant, but to wait for the government, even though it is inspiring that Cory Booker, vegan senator from New Jersey, and Elizabeth Warren, also a senator, have not a vegan, but they're together trying to do something to reduce factory farming, even though their timeline is very long. But I do feel that the solutions within the marketplace, I will say, having been a vegan for 24 years, when Beyond Meat went public and was the most successful initial public offering since the 2008 financial crisis, at the time it went public, all of a sudden, people who used to laugh at me, roll their eyes, and treat me like I was crazy started coming up to me and going, "Hey, how's that Beyond Meat?" The entire attitude changed completely. And now, as Miyoko can point out, vegan food is skyrocketing because of COVID, because of awareness more of the environmental impact of animal agriculture. There is a societal shift, Kip, isn't there right now? We always talk about hitting the tipping point. Isn't that tipping point happening now?
Yeah, the tipping point I feel happened actually in a way around 2012 is a global shift of, when the Mayan calendar, everyone thought the world might end. I feel really at that time, that's when a shift in consciousness happened. And is, kind of by design, where everything's hitting at the same time, the truth coming out, these conversations where the tipping point already happened. It's like, it's not reached that, it's already happened. That's why this is happening so fast. It's happening exponential. And as far as this movement, it's the only movement. The other movements in history, civil rights, women's rights, gay rights, all these other movements had one thing going for it. It was ethics. It was ethics, a common basic thing of being a decent human being. But with this movement, when it's happening so fast, it's not only ethics, it's environmental sustainability, where it's a survival ability that we have to have. So it's also a surviving thing, and ethics, and a health. So like, what other movement had all of these things working for it? And you can talk with anyone, depending on who they are, if you wanted to reach the truth to someone, depending on what they're into, health, environment, sustainability, you can talk at that level. So that's why it's happening incredibly fast, probably the fastest movement that's ever happened, along with technology, sharing information. So it's an exciting time. As I always say, is, be on the winning side of this of history, because it's just obviously clear what side it's on. So it's a good time to be on the train.
I just wanted to add something.
I'd like to just jump in for real quick, Holly, and then I'll toss it to you.
Sure.
Because I need to thank, before I forget, our wonderful sponsors. I'm so engaged in the conversation, and I was just sitting here thinking, I wouldn't even be able, none of us would be here without Miyoko's Creamery, without Mercy for Animals and Veg Fund, V-Dog, our dog's wonderful dog food, Free from Harm. Robert Grillo was on the panel, as is, of course, Miyoko and Leah Garces. It's jerky, y'all, the great Texas vegan jerky, and Veg World Magazine. So and then of course we have folks that are cross-posting all over the country right now and in other parts of the world. So just thank you to all of you, and thank you to all of our speakers. Holly, what were you going to say,
Just kind of to piggyback off what Kip was saying, about being on the right side of history, and also thinking about the FFA and everything like that. One of the more important things that Davey and I are doing is raising vegan children. We have 2-year-old twins that have been vegan since I was pregnant with them. And they're very engaged in conversation. Like if their grandparents offer them something to eat, they ask, is it vegan? But through this process of being vegan parents, we've met a really wonderful, beautiful community of people that are also raising vegan children. So it's important that we're having these conversations and we're, strategizing solutions, knowing that there's a whole generation of people, of humane people being born, compassionate people that don't have to be indoctrinated into the cycle of abuse blindly. They come into this world knowing what I'm sure most of us wish that we came into this world knowing. And it's inspiring and just instills a lot of hope in us to know so many amazing little kids that, never have had meat, have never had to go through that process or come out of that process, right? When the veil is dropped and you realize what you've been contributing to.
Well, you're normalizing the compassion. You're normalizing the compassion for your kids. It's you're not normalizing the violence. And so, one of the things I want all of you out there to know is that Holly really is the inspiration for the Rancher Advocacy Program. She is the one that inspired me with her panic and her passion when she contacted me many times, not knowing what to do and where to turn and whether she was making the right decisions. At the time, all I had to offer her was my heart. All I had to offer her was my compassion. That was it. And, she has taken all of that. And her and Davy are they're my heroes. To see what they're doing, to see them raise their kids, to see the turn that they've made. Thank you for making such a difference, such a big difference.
One of the things that we have to do right now is realize that the clock is ticking, that we have to make these changes because climate change is accelerating. We could be faced with future pandemics. It's obviously a zoonotic disease that jumped from animals to humans. And of course, issues that have been raised: world hunger, habitat destruction, wildlife extinction, water pollution, drought, etc. So let's take a look at how farmers themselves are suffering the impact of what happens when animal agriculture accelerates climate change. It's a vicious cycle. Let's roll the videotape.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 more to go. Y'all be good in there. Watch the leg. Easy. We are getting them loaded up now. There went Cinnamon. When they first started tracking Hurricane Harvey, it was a Category 1. And so I was thinking, no big deal.
There they are. Now to turn around and go get a bunch more.
Last June, we had our 50-year flood event. We had to evacuate all the animals then. When it was obvious it was going to increase, not decrease, we started making preparations.
All right, load number 2 is coming off.
We didn't know how it would turn out. We were just doing what we could in the moment.
Another round.
That's the worst I've ever seen it in my 20 years of living, so.
And then Sunday, who did you have on Sunday? Nobody.
Y'all, we need help here at the sanctuary. The water is rising. We need help at the fairgrounds as soon as possible, please. I'm feeling my weakness today. I want to be able to walk outside and see my animals. This is not a 50-year or 500-year flood event. I think this is the new normal.
Oh my God, my baby.
Wow, here's somebody that actually gets it, that understands this and isn't afraid to say it in the middle of, cattle country, no less.
It's great to rescue these animals, but until we start rescuing ranches, we're going to continue to have that outpouring of animals, individual animals that need to be saved.
So
every time,
wow.
Every time I see that, it's like I have PTSD and I go back in time. Not once, not twice, but 3 times we've been flooded in Angleton and had to think about all of the animals before we ever thought of ourselves. We've lost so much stuff that it doesn't even matter. What we gained is a heart for what really matters. And that is the animals, the land, education. I'm so proud of all of you that are helping our kids choose compassion with your programs designed to take these animals out of FFA. We too have 9 or 10 animals here from FFA and 4-H, you know, and we have a program called Families Choosing Compassion. And they come here and they take care of their animals instead of sending them to slaughter now. We have a whole program designed around it. It's beautiful. And I just want to thank you for rolling that video. Every time I see it, every time I just go back in time. So we got a lot to do.
I want to talk to Robert Grillo, Free From Harm. You try to shut down these slaughterhouses. We're talking about impact. Okay, climate change hitting the farmers, floods that are wiping out these concentrated animal feeding operations where these animals are trapped by the hundreds of thousands inside, dying as the floods hit, but also the human loss. COVID-19, slaughterhouses are a hotspot of COVID-19 and workers. Poor workers who have very little choice as to what job they're going to have are dying. They're getting infected and they're dying in these slaughterhouses. Can you address that?
And the communities that have to put up with, in Chicago, we have situations where there are slaughterhouses where there are laws against having slaughterhouses that close to a community. For example, there are several hundred residents and businesses within a block radius of a slaughterhouse in several cases. It's completely wacko, and it should be, it is illegal, but it's not being enforced. One of the things I wanted to add to this conversation is something to build off of what Silas said earlier, which is this idea of monetizing things, and which is the core of the problem, the commodification of animals and the planet and the resources. And I think we can also extend that to our activism. Look at it simply as a transaction. We call it transactional activism. But in fact, what we're doing is transformational activism, which I think really requires a really broad, creative kind of brush to look at how we can change things. And what we've done is really get community members, turn them into activists, get them to call and email and show up at the offices of their decision makers who are making bad decisions that are going to affect their lives and affect their quality of life, and get them to take power and have a voice. This is something that people generally don't think they have. And it's really wonderful and very heartwarming for us to see people get that power and use it for the first time in small towns and big cities, in neighborhoods where we're lower income neighborhoods, where people think they don't have a choice. They have to put up with this, but we show them that they don't have to put up with it. And we can get on the case of the people that are in charge and make them do their jobs. That's how we get stuff done.
We're going to open this up to everybody on the panel right now to just have a freewheeling conversation. I mean, the clock is ticking, Leah Garces of Mercy for Animals. What kind of commerce or economy, tourism, business can we have if it's too hot to walk across the street, if there's floods wiping out businesses every couple of years that are 100, 200, 500-year floods?
Yeah, I think you're raising a really good point about the lack of foresight we have in choosing this food and farming system. And if we were to start all over again, we would never choose this. It wasn't even chosen for the purposes it is today. It was chosen during a time when there were food shortages and there were subsidies. So we're using a system when that was invented post World War II, and we've just by default continued to use it because it's what is in front of us. But it is, by all intents and purposes, a bankrupt system that regularly has to be bailed out again and again and again. So, when we look to the future, we have to keep that in mind. We have to think through what actually is sustainable. And this is where I think big government subsidies and systems can help, even at the UN level, thinking about the World Food Summit that's coming up, thinking of ways that we can channel the governments, channel the vast amounts of money that are currently channeled to support the system, channel it away and try to think of better systems. Previously we were talking, not to take this off topic, but we were talking about how there's a new economy emerging around plant-based products and how exciting that is. And that's where I get excited. And so Miyoko was referring to, okay, in future fava beans might be something that we don't have. Well, think of all the products that are emerging that are going to need farmers. A lot of the companies right now are using farmers really far away, like in India, for example, because in India, there has been a much longer history of using a variety of proteins, of legumes, and we just don't have that in the United States and a lot of other countries. So we have an opportunity to really shift farming and food and the rural economy and the economy as a whole towards supporting a future plant-based economy. And I think what's really exciting is there's no other situation in which there is a, sorry, my daughter's handing me this. She wants me to show you. It's a unicorn drawing. This is what Saturday looks like. So there's no other economy, there's no other product in the market where you have a bunch of cheerleaders for free, right? So you have like the Beyond Burger and the Impossible Burger out there, and then you've got Mercy for Animals and the Humane League who are rallying for the success of this product. And I think that just means that we're gonna have a lot of success. It's really exciting how fast that kind of product could be successful.
Wow. Yeah, you know, one of the things that I've been studying is the fact that animal products are so cheap. Meat is so cheap, is because the true costs are hidden in the cruelty. It's hidden in all the cruelty of the animals and in the pollution that's flowing into our communities. You know, you can't even put a price on the pollution that's flowing into our communities. You can't put a price on the suffering and the quiet trauma of the slaughterhouse workers and all of us, you know, that have to endure the impact of all that. So I'm just wondering, you know, I would love to hear, you know, once again from my husband, if we could, just to hear from him for a minute about, you know, when we went through all those floods and being a former cattle rancher, you know, just what it was like for you when we saved those animals instead of just getting rid of them, you know. I mean, I remember when you used to tell me as a cattle rancher, you know, well, we got to get rid of this animal. We got to get rid of that animal. It's time to get rid. And now it's like you have changed to this person that just wants to save and love these animals. I'd love for people to hear your heart, Tommy.
Well,
Tom,
I never did. Can you hear me? I never did like dropping my animals off at the sale barn. That was the hardest part of being a rancher. And I was never a really big rancher. I ran about 30 head of cows and would sell about 20 a year. But it was tough on me because you get to know them and you want to take really good care of them. But then, you know, America has to eat. That's what I was always taught. And because Renee enabled me to convert over to a new lifestyle, which I'm really proud to be here with y'all. It's been so wonderful now to just take care of them and watch them grow old. And it really hurts us whenever they, you know, they pass away at 20 years old or 22 years old. But, you know, they're beings just like we are. Back in the 1800s, I think people were pretty much forced to have to eat animals. You don't have to anymore. I guarantee you, I get plenty of protein. I get everything I need and too much of a lot of it. And I am totally vegan, and I never saw the reasoning to make a veganic farm on a sanctuary in the early days. I just wanted to till the land up, use the cow manure as fertilizer. But I got to thinking about it, listening to people, and we have to show people how to do it veganically, because we're just setting an example here. And yeah, we're going to save as many animals as we can, but we have to learn to grow our food without the animal products. A lot of the organics are a very good step, but it's not good enough. Veganic is the way to go.
We have another video showing how the ranchers and the farmers are really in a tough spot, and they are grappling with this. We're all here to be of service to them because so many of them want out. Let's roll the videotape.
This is where I'm trying to go with this, y'all. I feel like a hypocrite being an environmentalist and knowing what's going on with beef in this planet.
Come here. Oh my God.
You know what I mean? So I can't very well say, yeah, I'm an environmentalist and still do ranching. If you're going to talk the talk, you got to walk the walk. And so me saying that I'm an environmentalist and have is talking the talk, but not walking the walk.
Yeah, and so one thing I want to ask the trailers, I have heard that there are a lot of farmers who want out, and they're just looking for a way, which is why we should get back to our essential question. And we are going to open it up to questions from Zoom and Facebook in a second. How can ranchers thrive without using animals on their land? Mr. Trailer, are other ranchers sniffing around saying, well, if you do it, I'll do it too?
You want to answer that, Cindy? Well, our neighbor, when we talked about, the sad thing about the world is it's all about the dollar bill. It's the big fat S with the lines through it that makes everything work. If you can instill in these people that have been indoctrinated to be harmful to animals for the almighty dollar, that the opposite of that is going to actually bring more dollars, I think then you're going to get their attention. And, unfortunately, we're just, like I said, the economy is all about greed. But you're going to have to work with that. You can't just turn that light switch off and turn into humane. I like what Skip said, the word humane. We're indoctrinated at a young age to think it's okay to be harmful, hateful, mean to animals, chickens, eat beef. And then all of a sudden, it's not that far of a stretch to go from being cold-hearted to animals to being cold-hearted to humans. And if you go the other way, next thing you know, you're going to have another plus, another positive, excuse me, where you're actually more humane to humans. Duh. I know I'm getting off the.
We have a neighbor.
I'm not answering your question very well, Jane. I know I'm getting off the subject here. I just want to get that in there. But we do have a neighbor
who's interested. As we progress, he wants to progress.
They're from India and they have 40 acres right next to us. And and they're vegan. They were vegan before we were.
Wow.
And they shared some of the same concepts. And the light went on when I said, anything that smells that bad when it's dying, you shouldn't eat. And they just both lit up and said, that's exactly the way we believe. So yeah, they're definitely interested, but they are part of the problem too. In the cycle, they process their hay, their whole pasture. They've cut down trees for more hay, for more money. If you could get them, if you could get y'all's concept, our concept, if you will, instilled into them, there again, the money aspect of it, where you don't have to take a hit financially. I think that's the trick, Jane. Am I close to answering your question?
I agree with you. Yes, people do need to survive and they need to make money. And so that's really the translation of our question. How can farmers and ranchers make money without using animals? And I want to go to Dr. Silas Rao because you've talked to me about a lot of high-tech solutions. There's even a scientist who is using plants to create electricity. I don't know how far along that is, but we got to really think outside the box to bring in other products and also the regional cooperatives, so that, let's say, the trailers can work with their neighbors and then their neighbors' neighbors and their neighbors' neighbors. So each farmer doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. Dr. Rao. Dr. Rao. Dr. Rao, unmute yourself, sir.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, we need to be sharing information so that we can help each other. as we transition out of this mess that we are in. And simultaneously, we need to be thinking about a new game, because the current game is forcing us into this model, right? So this is why Paul Chatelain couldn't get reimbursement from Blue Cross Blue Shield for his cooking classes. So that same kind of lack of reimbursement is happening at a global scale for all of humanity. We're not getting reimbursed for doing the right thing. And that's the system that we are stuck in. So we need to build a different game that would allow us to get out of this mess that we are in. So that's what we are working on in the Vegan World 2026 project, because we want to get this done very quickly. Not, we don't want to even wait a decade. It needs to be done within the next.
When you talk about that, this new game, can you be more specific? Because that is so interesting. I've heard you talk about that some, and I think you need to elaborate so we all really understand that.
Yeah, so the current game is created by, with money is being created at the very top of the pyramid, and it's trickled down to us in the form of loans. Okay, and then we are given all these rules that when you take products from the earth and ship it up to people who are rich, then you can take profits as much as you want. This is how we steal from the poor. Because when you buy organic rice for $2 a pound in the supermarket, and then I go and talk to the woman who grew the rice in India, and she only got 5 cents a pound. So what happened to the other $1.95? So the traders took it, right? Because this game was designed by colonial traders. So we're still playing the game that they created like hundreds of years ago. And that's how we are coordinating our actions. So instead, I'm saying money should be flowing from the bottom up, not from the top down.
So how do we change that game? I know from the work we're doing at the Rancher Advocacy Program with our scientists, with the folks we have in finance and the business planners and the work that we're doing, just how difficult it is. I mean, you can't just expect nonprofits to pay for all this. I mean, granted, we're now talking about the green bond, we've got land grants, but Silas, how do you see this really happening?
Right.
This is the crux of the matter.
Right. I mean, I see it happening because it is necessary for us to change the game anyway. We know that because the old game is killing us. We know that. So we have to create this new game, set up the rules for the new game, and start playing it in conjunction with the old game. I'm not saying throw the old game away and just start playing the new game. I'm saying you have to play both games. So in the new game, that we create, you'll be testing out how do we live within the bounds of the planet, right? So you have to put all the bounds of the planet within. It's an engineering project. It's not so complicated to design this game. So we design this game, and then we have to play both games simultaneously. As we play both games simultaneously, the corporations will be forced to change. Just like the corporations were forced to change to give us vegan food in Wendy's or vegan food in Burger King because we demanded it.
And McDonald's now.
And McDonald's,
Kip, do you see that as one of the biggest, for years, we've been fighting to get a vegan burger at McDonald's, and now we have a plant-based burger at McDonald's, the iconic fast food chain that is really emblematic of all meat and dairy. And now they've got the McPlant, and they've even said that could be first in a line. Where is that in the tipping point that you say has already occurred?
Well, it just shows an example of it. And it's one of those, support it. Like, obviously, it's a touchy subject for some, people in the animal rights community, where it's like, when that comes out, I don't want to support McDonald's because it's about, supporting that industry. The one thing to think about that is looking at the big picture. Back in, I don't know if it was the 80s or 90s, Burger King put out a veggie burger, actually, and no one supported it. A lot of people were like, I don't want to support them because they're killing animals. But sometimes you have to look at the big picture. And so we do have to support, say it even is like the McPlant, and again, I don't even know if this is the right thing, but just really the concept I just want to get across is thinking outside the box of the big picture of doing something you wouldn't normally think of, supporting buying one big McPlant when it comes out, just to show this swell of, yes, this is what we want. And then that's how Beyond Meat expanded, just blew up, because that's what happened. So it's happening really fast, and that's just an example of it.
We have so many questions. We're going to show one more video, and then we're going to open it up for questions. We hope our panelists can stay because there's hundreds of questions. But this short video, 1 minute, highlights the work of Dr. Silas Rao, which was showcased in my documentary, Countdown to Year Zero. Check it out. Roll the videotape.
The moral position is to resist this and to end it.
People need to know that this is the reality.
What's the problem?
So we have a system that's based on, making money off death, disease, and destruction. It's something that we have never, ever faced before.
The trees are going up in flames.
We have 10 years to turn it around.
The Earth is telling us we have to change.
Inside of here is my daughter. I want her to have a good planet to live on, not just a planet to live on, because this planet will survive us.
This affects everything.
That's the only way out that we have. That's the only way out where I see light.
Yeah, it's the #1 thing you can do to reduce climate change.
And I totally recommend it.
Yeah, it is historic. In 20, 30 years, you'll have all our friends hitting us up being like, yo, you're a visionary.
It is a fight against ignorance and apathy.
Moin.
Wow. Jane, I tell you, it's been such an honor to be part of your evolution, to watch you produce this film. I remember sitting in your living room when it was still being worked on and you showed me bits and pieces of it. You have created a masterpiece here, and you guys can see it on Amazon Prime, right? Is Amazon Prime where you
Countdown to Year Zero. It's on Amazon Prime. And thank you, Renee. You're in it, as well as Dr. Rao, who I met while he was speaking at your sanctuary. But the reason we're playing that is that the clock is ticking. We have to make changes fast. And we're going to open up to questions now because there's hundreds of them. And the idea is
one thing. Before you do, one thing, I just want to say that all those questions out there and all the people that couldn't get in, y'all, there's 18 countries represented on this summit. There's Africa, there's Australia, Canada, Czechia, Czechoslovakia, France, Germany, Great Britain, Hawaii, India, Israel, Italy, Mexico, Switzerland, the UK, and the United States. That's how many countries are represented in this summit. And so grateful to all of you. And I agree, the questions are the important part right now. Jane, is there a question we're ready to bring forward?
I'm going to kind of group a question together because some people want to start sanctuaries. Other people are talking about permaculture. Let me throw it to Leah Garces of Mercy for Animals. The big problem is there's going to be a lot of animals left over. A, we have to start forcibly reproducing them. But B, is there a way where large parcels of land can be purchased and then you create a self-sustaining sanctuary where the food is grown naturally through a permaculture and then the animals can eat there as opposed to having to be fed hay?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I am not an expert on land. I would probably throw it over to Eugene for an answer on that.
Great.
I think he's probably got some great ideas on that, given he's training the next generation of young farmers.
Thank you, Leah.
Perfect.
So, thank you so much. One of the things that's really missing in this conversation is the young people, people who grow, and people who historically have been growing all the food in the United States. And so it's really a blessing for me to be present on here. And it also it's incumbent on me to be very responsible with this platform, knowing how many people are watching. So all these different countries that are watching must understand that what Renee started with was really important when she said the foundation of this country started on livestock, but they called it stocks and bonds. Bonds was the people in bondage that were also sold on Wall Street along with the livestock. Those people in bondage were primarily of African descent, stolen and brought here because of the genocide of the indigenous people who knew how to steward the land, who knew how to work in harmony with the land and have it be productive. So the fact that we continually go to privileged communities to ask how we can save those who don't have the answers is a misdirection of our energy and our resources. Now is the time Grow Where You Are has a Patreon page. One of the things that we're going to have to do as growers is we're going to have to be innovative and realize that what we know, our media and our practices are of value, and they can be monetized for ourselves. And so on different social media sites, they can be monetized so that people can learn the process of veganic agriculture and at the same time get a deeper history and understanding of the food system. When we talk about sustainability, when we're listening to people who are in nonprofit organizations talking about what's going to be sustainable for growers, that means we're in a very narrow conversation, because nonprofits by definition are not sustainable. They don't produce anything. So as one of the few producers on this conference, and definitely one of the few people of color in this space talking about this work, we need to know that saving the privileged cannot be the priority right now. Right now, the communities that are in need have been in need. And what that has done is created an amazing resilience in our communities. Our communities are resilient because of having experienced this trauma for centuries. The trauma of being disenfranchised from the land and the trauma of being in a space where every move that we try to make economically is smashed. So we have to generate a different meaning of life, as Dr. Rao was speaking about. So once we have shifted the game, well, who has shifted the game first? If we're coming to farmers or ranchers who are in their 50s and 60s who are just now becoming vegan, or we can go into the Black community in the historic West End of Atlanta and see vegan businesses like Soul Vegetarian that have been open for 30 years. Whole communities of people who have been vegan for generations and generations and generations, vegan midwives, vegan schools, all of this already exists. What has been disenfranchised and stolen is the land and the access to that land, which then comes the access to having, as you said, an asset, Jane, right? So if we're talking about the clock is ticking, then what we do is we return to the root of the issue and we see, where did we get off track? Enslavement, we got off track. Bringing people from Europe who don't know this territory and asking them for leadership was way off track. There is already indigenous people who know this land. There are people who've been raised in a similar climate zone, who have been brought to this land, who know what works, who have always ate primarily plant-based. So now what we have to do is shift our focus and say, if we've been looking to this group for leadership, and this group says they don't know, and they are paid to sit around saying they don't know, then it's time to shift those resources directly towards the growers and putting growers in leadership. And finding vegan growers is very, very easy when coming through Grow Where You Are. So well, that's what I would say.
Everybody brings their assets to the table. And that's what's so great about a discussion like this. You know, Mercy for Animals has achieved incredible things when it comes to exposing undercover investigations that expose some of the worst cruelties of factory farming that have woken up millions of people to the horrors. So I am so grateful to everybody who is here. I'm trying to sort of encapsulate a bunch of questions. One of the big questions that's coming up involves land. A lot of people are saying things like, the land is toxic. It's been pumped with chemicals and antibiotics, so that there's antibiotic resistance in the soil. And so it's not a question of just getting this land and transforming, but there's a lot of cleanup work that has to be done. Again, and maybe I'll throw this to Kim Sterla, because I know you have, worked directly with farmers. This isn't just like a question of, today I was a chicken farm, tomorrow I'm going to be a mushroom farm. That's why we need a macro solution, because every single farmer can't grapple with all the nuances of making this transformation when the soil is toxic, the warehouses are toxic, and it really requires a lot of investment. Kim?
I think Kim had to leave. She had to leave at the top of the hour.
I mean, who wants to take that? Anybody want to take that? Okay.
One of the biggest problems with.
Well, wait, I think we got Dr. Rao was going to say something. Hold on.
Okay, Dr. Rao, go ahead.
I'm going to say that David Simon is on the call, so he would be perfect to take this question.
Okay, well, let's see if
He
we
wrote
can. Who is
Metanomics.
David Simon? Who is David Simon, Dr. Rao, while they find him, because there's hundreds of
He's
people.
the author of Metanomics.
Oh!
So he's the one that Kip.
Wow. Okay, is David Simon here? Let's have him address this issue.
Hi, I'm here. I got on late actually for the next thing happening, so I think I missed the question. But if somebody
the
can,
question is that people are saying that there are we're talking about how can ranchers and farmers survive and thrive on their land without using animals, and people are saying there's a lot of problems with the land, that it's filled with antibiotic resistant bacteria because so many antibiotics are fed to farm animals, that there's tons of chemicals. It's not a question of being a chicken farmer one day and then voila, magically you're a mushroom farmer the next day. There's a lot of complexity in there to make that transition, sir.
well, when the US government a couple of decades ago decided to get out of the business of subsidizing the tobacco industry, it provided a lot of assistance to tobacco farmers to help them transition to new crops like wine grapes, for example, which they've been particularly successful with in the South, where the climate is perfect for that. So there's certainly no reason to think that the government can't step in and help. Tobacco is really very analogous to meat. It's something that that we tax to discourage consumption because we know it's bad for us, which is what we should be doing with meat. And I think we can make the same argument for let's get our government behind helping animal agriculture to transition to more human and animal friendly crops.
Well, I have to ask you a follow-up question then, because it seems like the agencies of government have been co-opted by the meat and dairy industry, whether it's the USDA or the Interior Department. They all seem to be working for the farmers and ranchers, not for the taxpayers. We have a situation at Point Reyes National Park where the agency, even though it's taxpayer land, is starving the deer, depriving them of water for the benefit of the cattle ranchers, the dairy ranchers, even though the biggest amount of tourism dollars comes from tourists trying to see the deer.
Well, I think we're facing a situation where science is going to have to lead the way for policymaking, which is also what we saw with tobacco. People may remember that in the 50s and 60s, it was common to see magazine ads that said things like 7 out of 10 doctors prefer Chesterfields as their cigarette of choice. And it took a long time for the medical community to get behind the idea that tobacco is bad for us. Once the medical community did get behind that proposition, it was much easier for policymakers to start to do things like tax tobacco, promote the fact that it's unhealthy and that we should be weaning ourselves off of it. And we've gone from something like 1 in 2 adults smoking 70 years ago to less than 1 in 5 today. So when the medical community, this is my position, my perspective on this, when the medical community gets behind the idea that meat is actually bad for us, policymakers will be able to follow, and laws and tax policy should follow at that point. We might be a few years away from that, but it certainly seems like we're headed in that direction.
Well, you know, you bring up a really important point about the policy, because, you know, we were approached about a year ago by the Agriculture Fairness Alliance. Laura Reese is going to be speaking at our next summit, which is scheduled for February the 6th. And, you know, they met with me and Paul Berry, and we created the At-Risk Farmer and Rancher Transition Act. If you go to afa.org or agriculturefairnessalliance.org, you can read all about it. But what that is legislation that they're really, really trying hard, or we are, to get into a bill so it can be introduced to Congress, just like Senator Booker and Elizabeth Warren are doing. I mean, these programs, to get them in Congress is so important. I'm meeting behind the scenes with Texas legislators, vegan legislators, behind the scene to figure out what we can do right here in Texas. But the beast is so huge. The beast is huge. We got to figure out how to get it from every angle, and we got to use every spoke of the wheel. So I'm glad you brought this up, David, because it's such a great analogy using the tobacco. It's exactly the same.
Oh, thank you so much. We'll have you, if you agree to it, on our next summit, because you are a wealth of information. Thank you, David Simon.
Yeah, sure.
What a joy to have you pop on. Here's something. Steve Rock and Roll Wood says, I have 40 acres of land that is only growing sagebrush. I have no money, and in fact, I'm in debt and homeless. Are there any resources I can acquire to grow things like mature soybeans for human consumption? I can't find soybeans, which USDA says has the most protein of any food, including animals, in grocery stores. Who wants to take that one?
That sounds like a question for Eugene.
Yeah, well, when it comes to that kind of question, if somebody has land and is homeless, and they're trying to grow soybeans, we have to understand that these are the moves of desperate people. And if I'm going to be dealing with desperate people, I'm going to be dealing with the 80% of the desperate people that now live in cities. 80% of the American and human population lives in cities, and soybeans are probably not one of the first things that we would be making sure that people have. I don't know where the land is. Maybe I missed where the land is, but what needs to be happening right now is if people have land like that and they find that it's useless or they're not living on it, if they're homeless, maybe they're not living on it or they don't have a home on it. I'm not sure the circumstance, but they want to look at selling that land and acquiring land that is more useful and productive. And the same goes for when people are talking about how toxic this land is as well. We're going to have to face the facts that, again, this is a conversation of privileged people, and we're getting ready. The vast majority of the American population is not privileged. There are people who are unhoused all over the place. So certain people are going to have to let go of their assets and change their style of life, lower their expectations in their lifestyle expectation. It's the American lifestyle expectations being shipped into all these different countries through media that is destroying the planet. So the new game that the doctor talks about is the game where we look at the people who've already been terrorized, victimized, stolen from, and legally shackled into poverty. And we look at how they have survived. What has made them resilient? And we start to put them in leadership roles for these transitions that we're talking about. Because talking to people who have lived a life of privilege and them wanting then to have stopgap rescue initiatives for growing things that people don't need, when we could be right now in November, what we're planting in Atlanta is garlic, onions, turnips, radishes, beets, cabbage, carrots. That's what we're doing right now. This is what we need to be talking about. Immediate localized food systems that help the larger group of people rather than this small group of just ranchers.
We have been talking for almost 2 hours now. We want to get more questions in, but let's try to just recap and review. We started this to ask the question, how can farmers and ranchers thrive on their land so they don't have to just leave their family land, but they can stay on their land without using animals. We've talked about micro solutions. We've talked about macro solutions. One of the things that I feel very strongly about is that we should not ask every farmer to have to figure this out and reinvent the wheel. We need to come together as a movement and form infrastructure, just like the animal agriculture world has infrastructure. If we had infrastructure of and this is exactly what Dr. Silas Rao is doing, creating an infrastructure for a plant-based world. If we had an infrastructure where farmers who have similar situations, similar geography, similar land, similar temperature could get together as a regional group and then figure out economies of scale and how to connect with the many plant-based producers that need products like what Eugene just mentioned, as well as things like potatoes and soybeans and cashews, et cetera. But this requires people getting into this who are capable of creating these infrastructures. And so that requires money. And I think one of the most important things that can be done now is to reach out to, and don't get mad at me, people, the big money. and the technology leaders, because right now, at the rate we're going, we're going to have a world that is almost uninhabitable in a decade. It's already hit 135 degrees, not far from where I'm sitting in Los Angeles. People are having a hard time even enjoying their homes because it's impossible. And then they stay inside. There's more air conditioning that accelerates climate change. We're in a vicious cycle. So I want to talk to whoever can answer this question on our panel about, are we reaching out? And this connects to a question about technology. Can we use technology to make this shift? Are we reaching out to the, let's say, 100 people who are power brokers who essentially run our country? I'm talking about the Jeff Bezos, the head of Google, the head of Facebook. I mean, these are supposedly the smartest people in the world. If they can't figure out that animal agriculture is unsustainable, then, I don't understand how they wouldn't be able to, but I just don't believe the presentations have been made because, for example, I know Jeff Bezos is giving a huge amounts of money to solve climate change. So, Leah, why don't we talk about that with you a little bit? Like, what are the outreach possibilities of our movement to connect with people who can create green bonds, who can create regional cooperatives, who can create grants, who can pour some money into this? Is Leah there? Leah?
I believe she had to check out.
Okay. Well, we're going to go to back our old favorite, Dr. Silas Rao. You worked at a high-tech company, Dr. Rao. You were instrumental in accelerating the internet speeds, which they told you couldn't be done.
Right. But I think rather than depending on these few wealthy individuals who are desperately trying to cling to the old system, we need to be looking at things from a more distributed perspective. Can we all get together and help feed each other? Can we all get together and help bring back the food forests? Can we all get together and Indian reservation, Indian tribe here does not have the highest rate of diabetes. This is a grassroots movement. Unfortunately, unlike the tobacco situation, we never had 98% of the people eating, smoking tobacco, right? Which is what we have with the meat industry. 97%, 96% of the people are still eating animal products. So this is why it's much more of a grassroots movement. We need to grow our movement first through education, and then these leaders will come along. Until then, they are not going to come along because they are trying to cling to what they have. So this is like exactly like that Paul Chatelain situation, right? That he couldn't get Blue Cross Blue Shield to fund his cooking classes. In the same way, we're not going to be able to get Jeff Bezos to fund our projects for veganizing the world.
Focus on any particular names. I'm just talking about the heads of corporations in general.
Right.
And let me, you're bringing up something really big about COVID. I mean, the whole thing with COVID right now, Claire Smith is on the call. And, she made a very important point here. She says the highest rates of COVID-19 and death from COVID-19 are in countries with high meat consumption per capita. And I have a quote here from Elizabeth Warren. She says, for years and years, giant multinational corporations have been crushing competition in the agricultural sector and seizing key markets while regulators have looked the other way. She also says the COVID-19 crisis is making it even easier for big ag to get even bigger and gobble up small farms, leaving farmers out in the cold and consumers facing even higher cost and fewer choices. We have an opportunity right here with COVID-19 to do exactly what Dr. Rao, what Eugene, what Leah, what we're all talking about here. We have the opportunity to seize upon this devastation, this crushing juggernaut of COVID-19 and make these changes. Jane?
Yes, and we have one of our sponsors on, Brett Christoffel. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, sir. You are the owner of It's Jerky, y'all, which is a vegan jerky. So there's nothing more Americana than jerky. And it's synonymous with Texas and cowboys, but it's vegan. What do you see? You've been listening to this whole conversation as somebody who is the owner of a company that needs products. Where do you see the marriage between farmers who want out of animal agriculture and plant-based companies?
Howdy. Thanks for calling on me, and thanks for having this today. Nice to see everyone, or most everyone. You know, I know that Miyoko is much more connected in putting farmers directly in contact with their business because it's a much larger company, but there's always going to be opportunities for people who manufacture plant-based foods to work with farmers depending on where they live. We use whole non-GMO soybeans, certified non-GMO in all our products, and they're mostly grown in the Midwest because that's where they grow the most soybeans. And so I don't know where the tie-in would be except for larger corporations. But the fact is I know that the plant-based food business is a juggernaut. I mean, it's at close to 6 billion this year, and will be at 75 billion 2027. And I was just reading a study that by 2040, 60% of all food products will be plant-based. So the change is in motion. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer for your specific
Those are
question.
great facts, sir. Thank you so much. We're getting a request to find out, is anybody here from Iowa? Because Iowa is obviously a huge state when it comes to animal agriculture, but there are also quite a bit of initiatives in Iowa to evolve beyond animal agriculture. In fact, there are a whole bunch of groups that represent slaughterhouse workers who are getting sick from COVID and dying of COVID, who've launched what's called Boycott Meat. And so if anybody is here from Iowa, please let us know. We would love to hear from you and embrace you in this conversation. Again, we are talking about the big picture. I'm curious if David Simon is still on. Because obviously you're a wealth of information, David, and let me know if you're on. I keep coming back to this idea of green bonds because the brick wall that we keep running into is money. And unfortunately, it does require a lot of money to change these farms and transition them. I was quite naive when I first entered this space, thinking, wow, chicken warehouses look very much like hemp warehouses and mushroom warehouses. Let's just switch them out. Only to find out that the chicken warehouses are so filled with urine, chemicals, and antibiotics and all sorts of toxic things that you need to bring in a special company to basically vacuum all of that out. And it costs many tens of thousands of dollars right there off the bat. So obviously, if there's not economies of scale here and coordination, it's not going to work. So we'll see if David is available to answer that question about how we can maybe use green bonds to raise the funds using the farmer's land as collateral to bring in some major investment money to make these kinds of changes, transition these farmers, and in return, those who are investing get an asset that has tax incentives to encourage them to invest. Are you there?
Hey, Jerry, one of the things, I mean, I appreciate this question. Believe me, we need to answer it. But there's a question on your Facebook or somebody's that's from Louise Gray. She says, ranchers, you would make a living. You can make a living converting to vacation places, kid camps, dude ranches, and whatnot. Getting creative. And I know Holly and Davey at Starlove, if they're still on the call, have really been thinking outside of the box on ways to talk about creating a vegan wedding, and they've really thought about that. So what about vegan weddings?
Yes, and I think they're gone, but I think this is, we can brainstorm. Let me tell you, one of the people who was on the Zoom suggested, what about camping sites? Now I could tell you personally, I have always fantasized about going in a RV across the country, but I've also seen a lot of the camping sites up close, and I'm like, never mind. However, if we created a network of veganic farms that have been transitioned to camping sites that are almost like a trail across America, where I know I'm going to be greeted by people who kind of share my values, and it's something that would not be like some of the other camping sites. Nothing against them, but they're just not my cup of tea. I would be considering getting in an RV and doing that. I mean, I think the bottom line is we really have to think outside the box. And
what other questions are out there? What other questions are out there, Jane? Let's get some of the questions so that we can.
That was a suggestion. That was a suggestion question. The point is that the trailers. Let's throw that to the trailers. I mean, what about having a camping site and connecting with other farmers and ranchers who want out of animal agriculture to create a whole, like a pioneer trail where people could go camping and have a totally different experience than the regular camping experience that they have when they go to these pre-authorized, park your trailer here sites.
Right. There's so many camping places right around here that are humongous already. I don't know if that would work.
In our area, it wouldn't.
Yeah, because we're surrounded by the national forest. It's right across the highway from where we live. It's just, a few hundred yards from us. And there's camping sites that people utilize all the time. But this is along the line of what we've been talking about. If I could interject, Upton Sinclair is the reason that we have the Food and Drug Administration. He exposed the meatpacking industry back at the turn of the century. And there's just a one sentence quote that is going to kind of magnify the whole problem, if you will. And this is what we can explain to people when we're trying to get them to have an epiphany like we did. And here it is. This is by Upton Sinclair, the author of The Jungle. He says, "It is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on him not understanding it." That's what we're up against. And I know I keep going back to the money thing. I'm not trying to act like I'm smarter than I am. It's just that's the obstacle. And once we get these people to realize they can actually make more money, help the environment more, and help the human body more, then help themselves more, that's the light that's going to go on in their head.
Jane, you know what else you said, Jane? Remember we talked about it one day, having dude ranches? I mean, you put on your cowboy hats. You said one time to us, Renee, I would love to see y'all become like a dude ranch where, like people could come and have the experience. And I was seeing on here, somebody even mentioned dude ranches. Claire Smith says, check out Euro Camp. Louise Gray says, as a parent, I would pay $250 at least for 1 week for my kids to go to a farm. So, what we're doing, y'all, is having the conversation. The conversation is what's going to change people. These RAP summits are going to be had every single quarter. Save the date, February the 6th. That's going to be the next one. And as we have these conversations, more and more, we're going to be able to create the solutions that we need to change the planet.
And I want to, I understand David Simon is still on the Zoom call. We want to invite you on because you are absolutely a wealth of information. Getting back to our fundamental question as we wrap it up, we've only got a couple more minutes here. How do ranchers and farmers thrive on their land without using animals? What's your take on the solution in terms of, I keep coming back to this green bond because of all the things that I've heard since I started researching this. It seems to be the one that could have the greatest impact on actually coming up with the money that is required to change not just one farm, but hundreds or even thousands of them. David.
Thanks. I could not get unmuted before. It sounds great to me. I've never seen a green bond work, but it sounds like a great idea. And I know from talking to people over the past decade that there are groups of vegan investors who are interested in funding vegan projects. So until we get policymaking at the state and federal level behind initiatives like this, it seems like we could also self-organize and set up funds that get some transitions like this accomplished, because people do want to invest in that kind of project.
And they get tax incentives. So that would be the solution, because a lot of these farmers individually, they're overwhelmed. They can't wipe out their debt, get out of their contract. You know, there's a window of opportunity. As a person who was in contracts for many years, for almost 40 years, you know, the window's coming up, and that's always the big moment. Are they going to fire you? Are you going to sign up? Or are you going to get another job? So the moment, and I don't know anybody who wants to take this, the moment that that contract is coming up 6 months prior, that's the time when these farmers and ranchers can start opting to experiment with alternatives and think about, okay, I don't want to sign another contract with this giant poultry producer who's going to make me gas my hens when they just start producing eggs a little more slowly. I'm not that person. Now I need out. And that's the problem. How do they get out? They have huge debt. They've got a big warehouse that needs to be cleaned at the cost of tens of thousands of dollars. It's overwhelming. That's why we need big money to come in and provide a solution to all of them at the same time. And that's what I am seeing. So anybody who wants to take that, take it away.
Well, you know, I would love to talk to you, David. You know, we've got investors and funders that are really behind the scenes, looking at ways to do just what you're talking about. In fact, the Rancher Advocacy Program has been involved in some projects like that. It's not always easy throwing money at projects. And so, you know, there's so much research, so much has to be done to figure out, making sure you're getting the right farmers. You got to know their debt ratios to what type of land they're on, you know, what type of economic climate they're in, geographically. I mean, there's so many things to consider. Tommy, you've been around us while we've been, you know, doing all this work. I mean, it's been up and down roller coaster. Tommy, do you have just a few words maybe you could add to this?
About converting ranchers over. It's a hard job.
The hardships we've had. You've been in the middle of it.
And even in the situation in the city, like Eugene was saying, you know, nothing is easy, but you just got to put one foot in front of the other and blaze a path. And everybody on here is a trailblazer. I really appreciate being a part of this. I can't answer your question, but it's going to take a funding and a lot of hard work. And, you know, we're into it. We just haven't figured out the exact right ratio.
I just want to point something out, and this may involve a quote from your book, David. Each year, American taxpayers subsidize the animal food system with $38 billion, according to the USDA Agricultural Marketing Service. According to David Simon in the book Meatonomics, for every $1 of product they sell, the animal as food system imposes almost $2 in hidden costs on taxpayers. Bring it down to an analogy with the fast food culture, your $4 Big Mac really costs society about $11. Everyone, those who eat meat and those who do not, incur a share of $7 in external costs each time someone buys that iconic burger with its mysterious special sauce. Compared to plant protein, raising animal protein takes up to 100 times more water, 11 times more fossil fuel, and 5 times more land. And the growth of lobbying in relation to the cost of running a national political campaign has ushered in an era in which legislation has weakened existing laws about cruelty to farm animals, food defamation, undercover investigations, food injury lawsuits, and our eco-terrorism. Our legislators need the animal agriculture industry's cash to stay in office, and the trade-off that props up the animal as food industry hurts U.S. citizens. That says it all. Yes, the government is aligned against this evolution, but as they look at the realities of climate change and habitat extinction, deforestation, human world hunger, and the skyrocketing healthcare costs as a result of the standard American diet, I really do have hope that maybe they'll start to see that what the U.S. government's doing is destroying ourselves. So I want to thank everybody for being part of this. Jane Unchained News Network was just honored and humbled to be partnering with the Rowdy Girl Sanctuary and the RAP Summit to put on this summit. And I will give Renee King-Sonnen the final word.
I just want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to all our sponsors. Thank you for being part of the conversation. It's going to change our planet. We are committed. We are dedicated. And like my husband just said, we're going to put one foot in front of the other. We're going to blaze a trail. When you're on the tip of the spear, you cannot see what's in front of you. You are blazing that trail. Thank you for being part of it with us. Jane, thank you for agreeing to co-host. Thank you to all the people behind the scenes, Lisa Brown, Keith, Kamito, Kwang, Johanna. Did I leave anybody out? Just thank you so much, everyone, for being part of the first ever inaugural RAP Summit, to be continued February the 6th.